But what people don't know is that I also tell people who this loser is, because I'm prepared to show you that Instagram version. Why is he only talking about men and women, right? You know, why is he only talking male, females? Why is he talking binary? Why are we not talking about? I say right now it's going to sound quite controversial, but it's absolutely true. When are you planning to do it? And he looked at his watch because it was that day. So because men were sat on the toilet looking up at this poster going, that's me, and they phoned that number. Now everybody in the business in HR went, well, it's the same number. Well, yeah, we know it's the same number, but not to that man. Reminding me that we need to break the silence with men, that silent majority of men. How do we get to them? We break their silence.
Welcome back to the Leading Boldly podcast. I'm Matt Clutterham.
And I'm Jenny Jarvis.
You know, we're all about amazing missions here at Q Branch, and today we're joined by someone truly special, our good friend Steve Whittle, the heart and soul behind Tough to Talk. If you know Steve, you know he's got one mission: to break the silence around male suicide, ensuring men get the help they need when they need it without stigma or barriers. He's all about real, effective solutions, ensuring that every element of Tough to Talk makes a real difference. In a world where men are often told to be strong, stay silent, and man up, Steve knows firsthand that this approach doesn't work. He's been there, he understands the struggle, and that's why he's committed to changing the conversation around men's mental health. His work is turning tough solutions into hopeful ones, and incredible partnerships with people like Balfour Beatty Vinci and the Football Association. His impact is only growing, and if that wasn't enough, Tough to Talk just welcomed a new ambassador, none other than Cool T of M&8 fame, to spread the word of male suicide and prevention techniques that actually work. Steve, it's an absolute pleasure to have you here. Let's dive in and break the silence.
Yes. Yeah, well, thanks for having me here. That's an amazing intro. And I'm going to have to note it down and then start using it when people ask me who I am.
We'll send it to you.
Yeah,
that's literally the first thing that every guest ever says to us on this show. So
yeah, no, I love it. No, I love it. Absolutely love it. But yeah, thanks for having me here. It's great. And it's also great to be associated with 90s R&B royalty with Cool T, right? Yeah, when that landed in my inbox, because he has an agent and he has a load of people. He has his people, right? But actually, I got an email from Cool T, and I thought, this has got to be a joke. So someone is winding me up.
Did the subject line start, "I've got a little something for you, Steve"?
Oh my gosh, could you imagine? I remember having our first meeting with him, and I said to everybody on the call, I said, under no circumstances is anyone to shoehorn that in. And the response was, if anyone's going to do it, it'll be you.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So we first met you, Steve, at a networking group, and they said, "Oh, we're going to have a talk by this guy from a charity." At which point, my heart sort of sunk a little bit. I'll be honest, like another talk from another charity at another networking event.
But not only that, it was going to be about suicide.
Yeah. And you got up and you started this story, and I thought, oh, this guy's a bit of a dick. And then you absolutely blew me and the rest of the room away, and that was it. Like, we were on board with the mission. So would you share that story with us now?
Yeah, absolutely. It's quite funny. I get that a lot. I know that I'm doing okay when I'm looking around the room and people are starting to glaze over a little bit, or they're looking at each other going, "Who's this guy?" Or, you know, and yeah, you're absolutely right. So we have this signature Tough Talk that we do, which is kind of our go-to talk when we want to kind of deliver the message about the male suicide crisis. And I'm not even embarrassed by using the word crisis. A lot of charities out there that deal with this, they say that we shouldn't say we're in crisis. I don't know why. I'm the most charity averse charity person in the world, if you like. I run everything like it's a mission, it's a business, it's a, you know, so it's so good that we have trustees that are always pulling the reins on me and making sure I'm good. But In terms of the story, basically the character was created out of my own lived experience, and I'm your typical man behind the mask, you know. So I did 13 years in the Navy, where I spent half of my career getting extraordinarily drunk in exotic places. I spent the second half of my career just volunteering for any opportunity to get medals and do cool stuff, jump out of helicopters, blow things up, you know, all those kind of things. I had a second career in health and fitness, and I really loved it. And I did really well. I did great as a coach myself, in personal training and nutrition coaching for weight loss and performance. And then I joined an organization, and our team won Fitness Team of the Year in our first year. I got. I wasn't shy on my socials about telling people about the stuff that we were up to. Had a third career in corporate events marketing for finance, for corporate finance. And again, in my last year with them, I only did 6 events and raised £2.4 million worth of opportunities. So, I was doing really great at it, right? And so this is normally the point in our talks where people are going, God, this guy's full of himself, right? But what people don't know is that I also tell people who this loser is, because I'm prepared to show you that Instagram version of me, like most men. And we estimate it's about 80% of men who are hiding behind this mask, who are not telling what's really going on. And yeah, my time in the armed forces, was spent getting very drunk and around the world, but it was also spent drunk, fighting, getting into trouble. I think the favorite phrase on any report written about me was, it always ended with before leaving, before bringing the Navy into disrepute. I went to naval detention quarters for accumulation of offences. They tried to channel my angst by teaching me how to box. That just made me really good at fighting when I was drunk. And it was just, it was really bad. But so, you then go chasing medals, and I'm going to start suffering with things. And I was 49 years old. Sorry, I go all over the place as well. It'll become apparent why in a second. But when I was 49, I'm 52 now. So when I was 49, I got 3 diagnoses in one session. The first one was depression. Depression I'd suffered with for 35 years on and off. Never told anybody, because most of the time I didn't know I was depressed. But I was in Hong Kong for 2 weeks for the handover, and I didn't go ashore once. I can't tell you what Hong Kong looked like, because I didn't know at the time, but I was either in work or in bed because I was so depressed. The second diagnosis I got was ADHD, hyper-focused ADHD. This would explain a lot now to people. Okay, so I become really hyper-focused on something, and at the detriment of other things. So it comes as no surprise to anybody that I've been married 3 times, and to 2 of those marriages should have lasted, because they were good women. They were really lovely people, and I threw those marriages away because I became obsessed with the things, and it ruined everything. It would also explain why I've had so many jobs within jobs. So when I was in the military, I had lots of jobs within that, because I was always moving to something else. The great thing about ADHD, when you get a diagnosis, I know you've had one, Jenny, right, is that you look back at your life and you go, that explains a lot. And you also work out that actually I need to apologize to those people, and actually those people owe me an apology. So that's kind of cool. And then the third diagnosis I got was complex PTSD. So something happened to me when I was 15 that I never dealt with. Something happened to me when I was in the armed forces, and something when I'd left, which like a typical man, like most men, I just buried it, didn't deal with it. So we have all of these things built up, and I'm not prepared to show that. You don't see that on Instagram. You don't say, "Oh yeah, I'm feeling really sad tonight. I'm almost in tears." And so what do you think about that, smiley face? Okay, where's my looks, my likes of that? So that doesn't happen. Most men are hiding behind the mask. And then you couple that with the fact that I've attempted to take my life 3 times. So the first time was when I was in the forces, and I took an opportunity. I was planning to die by suicide. I had a date in mind and everything else, but then we were getting close to that date, and a moment presented itself, and I just tried to take it. And I remember getting fished out of the water, and the team I was working with had me then running up and down the beach to warm up because they could see I was going down with hypothermia, and so they had me running up and down to try and raise my body temperature. And I remember the paramedic was saying, "My gosh, this was so close! It was a near miss," and he was already writing the forms out and putting down, "This is a training exercise gone bad." And I was like, "Okay, I'll accept that." Because the last thing I needed was them to realize that I'd done that on purpose. Because I would have to have admitted that I had a problem. Then I would have then had to have spoken about, and then would have felt like a burden because they would have gone, "All right, we need to say, look, take care of you." And I would have had to go through that whole process. But more importantly, I felt like a failure. I felt like a right loser. The one thing I had control over was whether I lived or whether I died. I couldn't even get that right. So, gosh, so I just buried that as well. Same thing happened again many years later. And then about 3 years ago. So about 3 years ago, that was the first time that I'd reached out for help. So I planned it. And, it's no, I don't keep it as a secret. I know we won't share on here, methodology and things like that because it's not the right thing to do. But if you go to the blog on the blog on our Tough to Talk website, you'll see, I'm very clear on my story there. But it was the first time I reached out for help, and I phoned up one of those helplines. I can't really remember which one it was. I could find out, but I didn't know what to say, but it didn't matter because they knew what to say. They were fantastic. And like a classic man, these 2 hours later, we had the crisis team on my doorstep trying to help me. And I was trying to help them not help me by telling them I was okay. I said, "It's fine. Yeah, I was in crisis about 2 hours ago, but now I'm fine. I'm sorry for putting you out. I know you've come a long way, And they were like, you're not fine. Let's talk about this." And I remember there was lots of conversation about me trying not to be committed. And I managed to avoid that. But the one thing I remember was they kept saying to me, "You're not alone. Lots of men feel this way." And I was like, "That's rubbish. That's utter nonsense." Because I know thousands of men, and my time in the Navy, then in the fitness industry, and then in corporate finance world, it was mostly men I was dealing with, and not one of those men ever said to me, "Steve, I'm feeling sad." None of them said, "I feel so low today that I've actually considered suicide as an option." No one's ever said that. So I thought it was rubbish. And I thought, right, you can't keep telling me that. Now, I didn't know I had ADHD. So at the time, but I used my superpowers of hyperfocus ADHD, and I was just going to go out of my way and prove these people wrong. And so it turns out I couldn't. I looked at the stats and I was like, well, damn, that's much worse than I thought it was. Think stats like, of all the male suicides in England and Wales, we can almost safely say that almost 80% of them are functioning adults. So they've got jobs, they've got friends, they've got family, they've got social lives. And when they die, we often say things like, "I never saw that coming." And we go, well, who's speaking to these guys? How do we find them? Because they're the ones who are really struggling. We are the stats on male suicide are, well, on suicide alone, it's horrendous, but in male suicide, it's even worse. And so at that point, I went, right, you know what? I'm going to get to them men. I'm going to turn my pain into this passion, and I'm just going to go and do that. That was a lot of talking, right? You're going to have to do a lot of editing on that.
No, we're not doing any editing. And it's funny because before we started, I said to Matt, do we need a list of questions? And he said, no, we're going to struggle to shut Steve up, so it'll be fine.
Yes.
So we haven't even got any questions ready. We know, we know the charity. It's so close to our heart, and so are you. And I think I want everybody to pay attention to the fact that you hadn't told anybody ever, and you're sat there going, "No, that's not true. Nobody's told me."
Yeah.
But you hadn't told anyone either.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, I don't doubt that for a second. It's there's tons of us. There's something called cognitive dissonance, and whenever I do any kind of talks and we talk about this thing, so maybe it's not a tough talk. Maybe it's the talks that we do on the gender mental health gap. When it sounds a lot like pay gap, but it's not. But if I'm doing talks on the gender mental health gap, or we're talking about resilience, or whatever it is, things that we're talking about, I always like to bring up cognitive dissonance, and I love cognitive dissonance because I like saying it. But cognitive dissonance is that when we know the right thing to do, but our fear of something else stops us from doing it. I always put a man on the spot in our talks as well. So if you're coming to one of my talks, don't sit near the front because I might ask you. And so what I'll do is I will tell everybody that I know that most of the people in this room, if I'm struggling, will want to help me. And then I'll normally move into a man who looks quite butch and quite strong, and I'll say, so if I was to say to you, I'm feeling really low, I'm having thoughts of suicide, I need help, what should I do? What would you tell me? And they always go, I would tell you to get help. I goes, and what help, how would I get help? And they say, well, you talk to somebody, you would talk to this person, you talk to that person, or so on. And I go, yeah, you're absolutely right. Now let's talk about your problems. And you just see the fear in their face. And they always say something like, well, I'm fine. That's right, because that's how it works, I'll break down walls and run through doors to help my fellow man if they ask. Only if they ask. I won't volunteer it, but only if they ask. But for me personally, I'm fine. And we know fine stands for feelings internalized, not expressed, right? So it's not happening. So that's one of the problems that we have when dealing with men. We have to understand those fundamental differences between men and women, and then we can help solve these problems.
You did a talk at my daughter's school for the boys, and I know that they absolutely loved it. And the teacher now goes around with a tough to talk pin on his lapel, and he's fully invested in the charity too. But that was just from me emailing the school and saying, look, guys, you have to think about the boys. Like, my daughter's really suffering, but I know the boys are suffering too, and you need somebody that they're going to connect with, and you were the perfect guy for that.
Yeah, I do remember that. We spoke about what they so we did in two ways, because they might have had lots of questions about how does that happen? How does somebody go from no thoughts of suicide to thoughts of suicide, often in a very quick way? And if they can understand that, then they can see where other people might be struggling, and they might understand how it might happen to them personally. So we addressed that really openly, we talked about the key factors that people might go through and might be suffering, but we also made it so they understood that actually not everybody who is going to go through those things is going to suffer. So we said that you still have to check in, because you don't know where someone's resilience is. If someone's resilience is really low, something that will affect one person badly will not affect somebody else badly. It's just those things. You just have to recognize them.
Yeah.
Is male suicide a much bigger problem than women's suicide?
Yeah, absolutely. Do you know, I should have started with that, because it's a really big thing. And I think I was talking to you recently, wasn't I, about how I forget with the simple stuff, the simple stats, because I think I talk about this stuff all the time, so everybody must know it, right? But you're right. So if we just look at England and Wales for now, men are dying at 3 times the rate of women. So we're still waiting for the stats for 2024 to be confirmed. But in 2023, there was 6,069 suicides in England and Wales. And that's the equivalent of 14 A380 Airbuses crashing. So we don't have, if we had one air crash, I'm sure there'd be some kind of investigation and preventative measures put in place, but we can allow for 6,069 people to die by suicide and not much stuff coming from the government. I'll not go on. But of those 6,069, 4,506 of them were men. That's huge. We're losing about 16 people a day to suicide, about 12 of them are men. And what's really startling is where those men are coming from, what industries. And it's mostly infrastructure, construction, manufacturing, farming, and these kind of labor intensive, what we would call masculine roles, and I don't think that's any surprise. I mean, Mates in Mind, the charity, did a study recently, and this stat just blew my mind. If we know that men are 3 times the national average likely to die by suicide, mates in mind that this study worked out that men in in construction are 3 times greater than the national average. So that's massive, that's huge, and that's why we welcome all of those partnerships we have with organizations in construction, manufacturing, and we focus on sports as well, because that's where men are either watching or taking part, so because it's a big deal, and we also break it down into regions as well, so because regionally it's very different. God, yeah, you're right, you can't shut me out, can you? So for example, if you look at the ONS data, Kent and Medway have, I think it's 11.8 suicides per 100,000 people. That's men. But when you look at the Northeast, it's 17.3. So a massive difference.
And Scotland's even higher, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm really saying that our charity is an England and Wales charity. And so I really want to be able to help support up in Scotland as well. But yeah, Scotland is higher. Ireland the same. And we have, not much is known why there are those differences. There's educated guesses, about socioeconomic status and so on. There are guesses about what's happening. And because there's very few studies that have been completed in this space. And why is that? Because men aren't talking. So you do a study, we want to hear from men about this. And that's not for us. Yeah.
And within the statistics, I mean, women are more likely to attempt to die by suicide, but men just choose methods that are more successful. So when people kind of talk about these statistics, they go, oh, well, what about women? Because they're all attempting suicide more frequently, but actually it's not about that. It's about the method, and they want to be more successful and they plan it more than women.
It's what about isms? Yeah, but what about women? Yeah, well, I get that a lot. And it's fine because we really care about women. We don't want anyone to die by suicide. But then we use and people might question, well, why are you only focused on men? Well, we use positive action. So the government's own guidelines on positive action, and so those guidelines are if there is a section of society who are less likely to get the help they need, or less likely to ask for the support that they need, then you can use positive action to help them, right? And so that's why the FA love this, because they use positive action for everything. They were like, yes, we want to be a part of this, and so we created this positive action approach towards dealing with men. And there are fundamental differences between the way men and women approach thoughts of suicide. It's very difficult because there are always exceptions to prove a rule, right?
Yeah.
And also there's one thing I should know. This got pointed out to me the other day. When I'm talking, there'll be people listening out there going, oh, why is he only talking about men and women? Right? Why is he only talking male, females? Why is he talking binary? Why are we not talking about people who people who say that they are trans, or they have one of the many other genders that they might have? Well, we have to talk in binary terms right now because the results are binary. So the results we get from the ONS are men and women dying by suicide. And when that changes, we can change our language. So it has to be that. So our charity supports anybody who identifies as a man. But in terms of allyship, we will take anybody's support to be able to help us support men. But when we talk about the differences between men and women, it's a real brush strokes. We look at the gender mental health gap, and there's lots of journals on this. So you can go get Lancet journals, and you can studies by various universities. Wolverhampton University did one, and so on. It kind of highlights the differences in men and women. So women are amazing. They are much more likely to ask for help. So they'll say, something's not right, I need support, right? And they are much more likely to offer help. So they will always be offering help to each other. And because we know that most people will find support in people who look like them, women are just helping each other. They're just clubbing in. They're going, yeah, somebody's not right. Okay, Sonia from account, she's not right. We need to get together. We need to help her out. Those kind of mindsets. So when life becomes so overwhelming and a woman gets so low and suicide becomes a viable option for them, often it is spotted, it's identified by the people who are around them, and interventions take place. So they might be planning it and attempting more often, but they'll get found. Often they're going down this journey of, I'm asking for help, you're not giving it to me. I'm asking for help, you're giving me the wrong help. Right, that's it, I've had enough. They'll make an attempt and then they'll tell you they've done it. And they'll say, right, I'm at my wit's end now. I mean, that's a cry for help. It isn't attention seeking. It's a cry for help. It's, you're not listening. And then sadly, some ladies, some women do go on to die by suicide. But for men, it's a very different approach. We know that men are not asking, supporting each other at an emotional and mental health level. When we ask each other how we're doing, we're basically saying hello.
Yeah, I was going to say, I can demonstrate the male version of what you just described right now. All right, mate. Yeah, I'm all right.
Yeah, that's it. And that's it. That's how we, when you start telling somebody, you go, oh, I wasn't expecting that. When we go to foreign countries who speak English and we say, how's it going? They're like, well, what's it got to do with you? Yeah. Because to them, it's a genuine question. To us, it's hello, right? And so men are not offering help. We're not open to receiving help. And one of the reasons this is because we have this fixation of what a man is. We're brought up this way. So if you think that most men have this perception that they must have value and they must have purpose, and you ask any man, they'll say, what is it? What do you do? They'll tell you the things that they do to provide value and purpose, right? And where does this come from? Well, first we have to look at generational gender bias. It's come from our grandfather to our fathers, fed into us, fed into our brothers and sisters, and we feed it into our boys, whether we like it or not. And even though we know it's wrong, we still got these massive hang-ups. What will you be when you grow up? You'll be the man of the house. You're the man. Okay, what is it to be a man? To be a provider, to be strong, to be silent. And that gets fed into us all the time. And it's the social cues that we pick up in our families as well about if a boy falls over, often they are picked up by a role model and said, it doesn't hurt, you're okay, off you go. That child goes, he's telling me it doesn't hurt, or she's telling me this doesn't hurt. Well, I'm telling you now, it does hurt. And you're telling me it doesn't. And then they see maybe a girl fall over and they get picked up and they get hugged. It's okay. Young men very quickly learn that actually what they're actually saying is that my pain is not as important as their pain. And then they get molded into this. Now, again, not in every case, but in most cases. And so they get this definition of what is a man. Now, even though we know it's wrong and we try not to do it, it's still happening. Then you only have to look at social media. Social media is horrendous. If you want a really good thought experiment, if you have a partner at home of the opposite sex, switch mobile phones with each other and go through each other's For You pages on Instagram or TikTok. You will get very different messaging between the two of you. So a man will get very dangerous tasks or dangerous jobs. Often women in yoga pants trying to sell you a laptop, and really poor examples of role models like Andrew Tate. Okay, so and Andrew Tate is really just filling a need gap for young men who feel disenfranchised, and that's why he's getting so much popularity. We need to out role model Andrew Tate, but that means us speaking up and speaking out. But then you look at women's social media and it's positive affirmations and good news stories and shopping. That's sexist. Okay, so it's lots of stuff like that. And then you look at media, television. I challenge everybody listening that or watching, give me a positive male role model from the last 20 years on television who is a good role model for your boys, who is not an unrealistic example of man like John Wick, okay, or is a nice guy because he's friend zoned. Nobody wants to be that guy, okay, or with the villain. So you feed all of that in, those three major factors. That is where men are getting their learned behavior. I must have value. I must not be a burden. So when their life falls apart and they feel worthless and helpless, and suicide is a real option, they've not told anybody, so no one's checking in on them. No one's looking out for them because that's not what we do. Remember, we see most of our solutions are from people who look like us. And so when they choose a method of suicide, it needs to be final. So when we've spoken to men who we've done interventions with, or men who have spoken about previous history of suicide attempts, and we said, well, why did you choose that method? They always say the same thing. It needs to be final. I mustn't come back from this because A, I'm going to have to talk about what I've just done. And B, people will then be running around and be caring for me, and I'll become a greater burden than I thought I was before. So that's why we are dying at much greater rates. That's so much silence. And then I just didn't know no one to help, which is such a shame.
Yeah. I mean, my viewpoint, which you know very well, is that in helping men, we help women anyway, because being around men that are silent, not sharing, have mental health problems, whether they're saying it or not, is not a comfortable environment to live in. And quite often that can lead to attacks against women. So if we can help men to speak up and deal with that stuff, we're going to reduce all the other stuff that comes with volatile relationships. But I want to talk a little bit about the language around suicide, because since we met you, our language around suicide has completely changed. It's not, people will hopefully have noticed that you've never once said committed suicide. And there's a reason for that.
Yeah. There's various bits of language. So committed suicide. I mean, suicide hasn't been an offence. You haven't been breaking the law since 1962, I think it is. So it's not breaking the law, but it's not really. That's not really the point. The point is that if somebody has been suffering depression and suicided, okay, and you use the term, oh, he committed suicide in front of the people closest to that person who died by suicide, it can be very triggering. The person I just lost didn't commit a crime. The person I just lost suicided. They died of depression. So it can be very triggering. So words are important. I mean, there's lots of phrases out there that we really need to be careful of. We often hear people say, so this, what I might say is factually true. Suicide has to be one of the most preventable causes of death. Factually true. How triggering is that for the mum who has just lost a child? Because they may never have seen that coming. And we've just gone, well, it's one of the most preventable causes of death. I might have just said, well, why didn't you see it? Right? So we have to be careful about the words we use. So we must use that phrase because it's true, but we must be careful in our environment that we say it, and do we precursor it, or do we say something after? Just be very much aware of the environment. There's another one that I used to use all the time, and I'm trying not to say it so much now, is suicide is a permanent solution to a temporary problem. Almost factually correct, right? Because almost everybody who's having thoughts of suicide, if they are given the solutions that they are needed, they will stop thinking about suicide and start living again, right? But what about those people who are in crisis and suicide? Their life is so overwhelming, that life is so hard, and dying by suicide is so hard. They've got two options in their life which is hard, death which is hard, and death is winning. And we say it's a permanent solution to a temporary problem. We are not helping those people when we use phrases like that. So words are important, because at that moment, those people are not seeing a third option of safety. They see a rock and a hard place, and they're not seeing a third option. So yeah, words are truly important. We should use them.
Yeah, I guess a temporary solution really belittles what they're feeling again. Like you was talking about, the way we talk to young boys, oh, it doesn't hurt. Oh, it's a temporary problem.
Mm.
It's the same thing, isn't it? There are two things around language that I know you use that I really love that I'd like you just to talk about a little bit. The first one is um, men don't have mental health problems; they have life problems. Tell us
Yeah.
a little bit about that.
Yeah. So in most cases, when we're talking to men and we'll say, okay, so what's going on in your life? Tell me about your life, right? They will tell us about things that they need to solve. So it's things in their life that I need solved. And we'll say, well, how do you feel about that? So we're talking about how do they feel emotionally and how do they feel mentally about what they're going through. And they'll say, I haven't got a mental health problem. I've got an ex-wife who's been horrible to me problem. I've got two children who I don't see problem. I've got to find lots of money to pay the court system to be able to get access to my children problem. And so most men don't see mental health and an emotional problem until it's too late. They don't know how they feel about those things. What they see is issues in their life that they have to solve. Because again, that's another trait that's put into us all the time. How are you going to fix this problem? There's an age-old argument, isn't there? There's a joke around. Women will say, "This happened and this happened," and the man will say, "Well, why don't you just do this?" And she's like, "Don't fix my problems. Just hear me moan about it."
You've never had that conversation with me, have you, Matt?
No, never. That's never ever happened. That's never happened.
Okay,
now it is like, Matt, I don't want you to fix this. I just need you to hear it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a really amazing feminist whose name's just going to jump out of my head. You're going to tell me who it is. Oh my God, she did a book called What About Boys? Or was it What About Men? Yeah, what about men? And then her name will jump into me, and she quotes this really great study about how women use about 15,000 words a day on average, and men use about five. And so, don't be surprised if by the time your partner gets home from work, he's used all 5,000, and now he's running on fumes. So maybe plan deep conversations in. Oh, Caitlin Moran, absolutely. If you get a chance to read that book, it's so good.
Yeah, I love that. The other one that we should absolutely talk about is Man Up.
Yeah, I love Man Up. I love Man Up because I'm in my heart of hearts, I'm in marketing. All right, because we need to market to men better. But my background's in marketing now, and I love Man Up because people say you can't use that, and I go brilliant. I'm going to use it even more because now we're talking about it, and so it becomes a talking piece. And the opposite of Man Up is Man Down. We don't want men to be down, we want men to be up. So let's use Man Up. Let's do that. And like the LGBTQ community, when queer used to be a really bad term, they just adopted it. And so they say, well, if we own the word, you can't hurt us. Well, it's the same with Man Up. If we own the word, you can't hurt us. Now, the other thing I really love about it is that it gets used all the time in male environments when something is really tough. Well, let's embrace that. And the environments I'm talking about is construction, manufacturing. They're 2 foot deep in water. They've got to lift a massive pole up into something. They've got to manhandle this piece, and they're going, right, come on, we just got to get this done. Come on, let's man up. Okay, we just got to do that because there was a time and a place where physical strength and that grit and determination has to be absolutely used. Well, let's use the same emphasis around manning up when it comes to other aspects of their life. If we can man up physically, then we need to man up emotionally and man up mentally. Let's start reflecting on those. How am I physically? How am I mentally? How am I emotionally? And let's man up about it. Okay. And if that means I have to talk and be open about the things that I'm doing, that's me manning up. And that's what we really love. And I don't see in the background.
I can see your book there. I was just going to say, where's your book?
Here's my book.
Hashtag Man Up.
When I say it's my book, it's the charities book. I curated it. I was very careful about putting written. I created it. We interviewed probably about 40 men, to go in the book to tell various stories, so different ethnicities, backgrounds, socioeconomic status, everything, all had one thing in common. Life became overwhelming. They struggled to deal with it. So we chose 20 stories that were very different, but very much the same. They all needed to open up in some way. And really sad story about the book as well. If I most of the people, so we interviewed nearly 40 people, and when we sent the release forms out to them and said, this is real now, guys, this is happening, sign this release form, it's going into print, and then forever it'll be out there. And I was only left with 19 stories. All the other men said, you know what, I'm not ready for my boss to know that about me. I'm not ready for my partner. I'm not ready for my mum to know that about me. So they pulled all their stories. Again, that cognitive dissonance, that fear of vulnerability. Okay. And I managed to speak to one person to get it up to 20. And all of those people have reported back to me that when people in their family and people closest to them had read their story, had shown them nothing but warmth and understanding. And as a personal development piece for all those people in the book, they've just grown, you know, and that's manning up, you know, so that's what it's about.
It's an amazing book, and everyone should read it, whether you're a woman, a man, or identify as different, because we are surrounded by men every single day. Whatever gender you are surrounded by men. And to read those stories, I mean, some of them are so heartbreaking. And as a woman, you kind of go, oh, I might have caused some of that in the past in other relationships because it was the wrong relationship or whatever. You know, you can identify with some of the situations and think, well, I never really thought about the man's point of view.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And the great thing about it is as well, the chapters of the book are, the names are real, by the way. We didn't change any of the names. We wanted to be really authentic, but they're all under different subjects. So it could be grief, it could be child abuse, it could be sexual abuse, it could be all kinds of things. So you don't have to read it in order, right? You could read it to the one that's relevant to you. But actually, the idea of the book originally came from a couple of women who said, I'm bringing boys up. I need something in the house that they could just pick up. And so they don't have to approach me to find out what it's like to be a man. They could just pick this book up and maybe read a chapter. And then that's where it originally came from. So, because women, again, are often the most caring. They're the ones who are putting these ideas out there. So that's where they came from.
Yeah, amazing. So what exactly does the charity do, Steve? What's its mission? What's it doing?
I love asking you this because, like, Matt has literally written, he knows the charity inside out and upside down.
But our audience don't.
Yeah, but exactly. And so you have to ask these questions for the sake for the audience, right? I get it. I'll tell you all about it. But you know what is for sure is that when I met you that very first time, and I was telling my story and everything else, we weren't engaging with the right people. Our message wasn't landing. We were just a small voice in this huge noise of mental health and suicide, and it was just it was no good. But actually, you listened to that and came and started working with us to help us, and I just basically threw up what was in my head at you guys, and you went, do you mean this? And I went, that's exactly what I mean. That's what we need. And then we scientifically designed the website on our messaging, and we found our differentiators from everyone else. So for example, our goal is simple. We're going to reduce male suicide, and we do that by taking the message to men in male-centric spaces. So we're either working with men who are in crisis, so suicide intervention, okay, and making sure that those intervention tools are in place in male-centric spaces. But also, and more importantly, we deal with the factors that, when not dealt with, could lead to thoughts of suicide. So that, again, is in those same spaces and talking their language. So stop talking, all about mental health. Because as soon as you talk about mental health, most men switch off. Reframe the issues that most men are going through in those spaces. whether that be gambling or separation from family, loneliness, all these big factors that men are thinking about. But when you go, well, we've got an EAP, they can just go and speak to them about their loneliness. Well, they don't see their loneliness as a mental health problem. So when you're banging about mental health, they don't put the two together. All right. So there's all these kind of problems. So it might surprise some people to know that we don't deal with men directly. Okay. Because there's already too many amazing people out there doing it, right? We know that the NHS are about a third of their services that help men in crisis are taken up. Sorry, help people in crisis. Only about a third of those are men. We know that it's even less for peer support groups and so on. So we don't want to join that because they're not going to come to us. If they're not going to anybody else, they're not going to come to us. What we do is we get those men to go through those open doors. So you've got amazing groups like peer support groups like Andy's Man Club, and you might have primary care, secondary care, tertiary care, and you have all that open to them, like talking services and telephone lines, and we're dealing with getting those men. So again, Samaritans, yeah. So so you have like that urgent support, and you have then that's the secondary care and so on. So if you go to our support pages, as a man who's worried about their own health, they'll immediately find out where they should go. And it's all action orientated. And they'll just go, I'm this guy. Oh, I'm feeling that. And now it's telling me to do that because that is an action and I should do it. Again, I'll do that. And if you're worried about a man, you can very quickly find, well, actually, I'm worried about a man about this. Oh, and there's the stuff that I can do to help support that man. And that's great. But ultimately, we can only work through partnerships. So we help organizations who serve men or men work in their organizations. So it could be charities like SJOG who focus on suicide for autistic men. It might be Deventia, who is a housing CIC that like 86% of all of the people that they house are individual men. And so we might support them to be able to support those men better, but also large organizations like the UK AEA and Balfour Beatty Vinci and, the FA, who either serve men or actually it's men who serve them. Well, how can we get into those spaces, use language that appeals to them, to get them to reach out and get support without fear of vulnerability being seen as a weakness? And we do that through awareness pieces and talks, real lived experience, and training and development, e-learning packages and all sorts. But it's been tailored for that organization. Yes, I mean, gosh,
it's not about getting businesses to upgrade their open door policy, because open door policies don't work because men don't walk through them,
or safe spaces,
all of those things. The charity is there to educate the business in how to help men effectively and properly, not in a checkbox exercise.
Yeah, we're doing so much stuff to help everybody's mental health at the moment, and none of it's working. And okay, so what I'm going to say right now is going to sound quite controversial, but it's absolutely true. So the Mental Health Foundation recently reported at the a conference for men's mental health in the workplace, right? So there's a conference for that in London recently. They presented and they showed statistics that showed that since COVID, the dramatic increase in poor mental health and unhappiness in men and women across the country has soared. Mm. We've seen a 20-year high in suicides for men and women across the board. It's soared. But in the same token, we've got certain mental health first aiding organizations who are bragging openly that 1 in 75 people in the UK is a mental health first aider. Well, actually, if that's the case and you're hanging your hat on that and saying, aren't we fantastic? 1 in 75 people are trained in mental health first aid. And all of the stats are showing that you are making no difference whatsoever. And actually, you're contributing to making it worse, in fact, because there's more of you and it's getting worse. Now, that sounds awful when I say it like that. But when we look into why it's happening, a lot of the time, like you said, it's a tick box exercise. So Look at us. We've got 20 new mental health first aiders who are well-meaning, they are caring, they are devoted to people and their organization. They want to be mental health first aiders because they want to help save people's lives. They want everyone to be happy. They are amazing individuals. Then they go back into the company. I'll go, right, now what do I do? Well, you just sit there and wait until somebody's in crisis. Then they will come to you and then you will signpost them to support. And every now and again, host a coffee morning and put it out on the intranet and say, if you're, come and have a coffee with us, even if you're absolutely fine. And we know people are just walking past, men and women are walking past, because if I go in there, other people are going to think I have a mental health problem. Okay, so I'm not going to do that. And it's worse for men. Men are going, if I go in there, there's a bullseye on my back, because my colleagues, okay, who want my job, will think, oh, this might be an opportunity. Now, we know that's not true. It's the perception. The perception of that individual is, if I show weakness, if I show vulnerability, everyone's going to be out to get me. And we know it's not true, but perception is reality. So with regards to mental health first aiders, how can we make their jobs better? How can we make them more impactful? Well, give them the tools to take it to the people. First of all, train the right people. Train the men who say that, oh, yeah, it's not the kind of training for me. That's not for me. The guys who have been on the shop floor for 16 years, who everybody looks to, and when the manager comes down and says, right, today we're doing this, no one looks at him and he goes, yeah, we're doing that, right? Because he's the most influential person. So choose wisely, choose role models and encourage them to get involved, because they're the ones who are most likely going to be listened to. That's one thing we need to do. And then the other thing is give them the tools to go into those spaces, okay, and speak up, and give them permission to do it. Make it okay, so that when that person goes, that's brilliant, that's fantastic, I'm going to do that, and they pass it up the line and speak to their line manager, or they contact the EAP, make sure that works. That make sure the line manager isn't going, I don't know what you're talking about. We don't do that. All right. It has to be top down, bottom up messaging throughout, that these really helpful mental health first aiders and suicide first aiders are asking for this support because it benefits everybody. God, I've had a rant. So there you go.
Hi, so we just wanted to stop the podcast for just a few seconds to introduce you to our HQ community. It's for bold solopreneurs and small business owners who are tired of doing things on their own, because let's face it, success is a team sport.
We've got a great community already together of brilliant people. They
Find
are
out more
kind,
and join
they
now.
are interesting, they are knowledgeable, and they are already supporting each other. What we've seen in the group in just the last few weeks has been really incredible.
Success
so
is
if
a
you
team
want to
sport.
join us,
Now
it is
back
the
to the
place to be.
podcast. I would like to, because we're really passionate about the charity. It's your charity that got our business award, the collaboration that we had. So people have heard about the business award, but it was with our work with you. And I want to talk to both you and Matt right now, because to me, you are the front man of the charity, Steve, and Matt, along with some other great men like John, are in other back men of this charity, and they're the ones supporting. I'm here on the sidelines, making sure that you're all still okay. In as exactly as you've said, me and your partner Bex, who's amazing, are sat here doing the woman thing of like, are you okay? When Matt spent 2 weeks building a website on suicide, that's hard. Like, you guys are in this messaging every single day.
Yeah.
And I know Matt is asking you these questions because he's the interviewer and you're the interviewee, but I want to turn this on Matt as well. How has it impacted you being in that whole world and within the charity? Because you're not a charity person either.
No. Hot seat reversed.
Yeah.
There's a new one for the Leading Boldly podcast. It is tough sometimes. And building the website was tough at times. There's a particular section of the website, it's called, which I know we're planning to sort of develop more. It's called Mind the Gap. And it's stories written by the people left behind after suicide. And the stories existed and everything, but I had to get them into a new platform and display them and all this of it, which meant I had to spend quite a lot of time reading them. And they are hard. And I remember there was one particular evening, I was working late on the site, and I had just put in this one particular story, and I did have to sit there for just 10 minutes and just have a bit of a mental reset, because it was like the impact is hard to read. And I think that's one of the things that I would like to get across, because I know the charity gets kicked back on why men, why men, why men. Male suicide affects the whole of society. Everyone. Steve, you know the stats better than me. You can tell us about the ripple effect, but it's huge, and it affects every person, every gender, every age, connected to the person who has been pushed past the brink. So yes, we're targeting men, but we're targeting men because they are the biggest problem. And that biggest problem affects the whole of society, not just men.
And that night you came home and you were very quiet and very distant and very disconnected. And I was like, okay, what's going on? What's happening? And he was like, I just need a cuddle. And, so it does affect everybody. It impacts everything. As personally, we've had our lives impacted by the ripple effect. So we're on the external of the ripple of suicide from a young girl and a mother, two women, but and we're on the edge of ripple of suicide, and people don't want to talk about this stuff. It's uncomfortable. We've got to put trigger warnings all over everything, but we need to be talking about it, because there are so many kids out there whose lives are directly impacted by someone else who has died by suicide. And I've seen on the sidelines with Matt working with you guys, just a complete visual solidarity of men who are supporting each other in the most amazing ways. And because because of the way we're helping the charity, you've helped us personally. You give us advice on stuff, particularly at the moment you're making us lift weights that we never thought we'd be lifting. Thanks, Steve. But, it's created a whole community of people actually in this charity and support. I think it's just amazing to watch.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. And, we wouldn't be where we are without, Q Branch. It's just, you winning that award, it was so well deserved for you guys, because you changed how we do stuff. You put what was in my head in a way that's palatable to organizations. So I was able to still be a charity and still be edgy and still be bold, for want of a better phrase. But yeah, you're right. The ripple effect is huge. For men and women. We estimate that about 15 people will be psychologically or emotionally harmed, emotionally injured by one suicide. And the ripple is huge, absolutely massive. And you think when somebody is famous and they die, the ripple is even greater. It's a real shame.
How was doing this changed your journey?
Gosh, yeah, that's a good question. So we had it's fine. Actually, I don't think
what word was that, Steve?
Yeah, I think so. It just happened to coincide because obviously I was going through lots of trauma therapy to deal with my complex PTSD. So that coupled with changes in my lifestyle. So, I mean, I train almost every day. I eat really clean, which means that I go off the rails quite easily. I mean, in the Navy, so any sailors who are listening know that you don't drink just for the sake of it. You only drink to get drunk. So I'm not a social drinker. I'll generally just drink to get drunk. So it wasn't, I didn't have any habits like that I had to give up. So training and eating well. Another one is to find your network that you you can trust and speak openly about and engage with, and then more importantly, then do it. That's the thing, right? You just then have to do it. So that's worked really well for me. The hardest thing that I have is because when the charity decided we're not going to deal with men directly, we're only going to signpost men, we're going to deal with the people who deal with men. That was a good thing for us because I get really emotionally connected with people who are struggling, and they share. And so I don't think it'll be a surprise to people to know that when we deliver talks and training, I think it's about, on average, maybe about 10% of all of the talks and the training we've delivered, I've then had to deliver a suicide intervention. And that's huge, And I remember for one organization, I remember getting into the lift with somebody, this monster of a man. And he was laughing and joking, and he's like, "Oh, you going to this meeting?" And I said, "Yeah, I am." He went, "Yeah, me too. I'm only 3 hours late because I was joining a conference that he was now 3 hours late for." He's laughing and joking, belly laughing, and everything else like that. And I remember delivering my first part of my talk about who's this joker and who's this loser, right? The comparison between the man and the man in the mask. And he walked out. And I always do this talk. I say, if you leave my talk and you don't tell me you're okay, I'm going to come after you. And he left, but I had a colleague with me, and they said, I got it. So they went. As soon as my talk was finished, they came and got me, and I had to go and do an intervention with the man I went up in the lift with. I would never have known for 1 minute. And it was, I was like, it can't have been you. It can't be this guy. When I went in there, it was struggling. And he told me that he was, I just basically described him. And he said, so I just asked him out straight like you do. He said, "Well, listen, when a lot of people talk like this, they're often having thoughts of suicide. Are you?" And he said, "Yes, I am." And so you then have to unpick that. And I said, when are you planning to do it? And he looked at his watch, because it was that day. So, when those things happen to me, then I have to do a lot, because I just automatically move into, we're going to save this guy's life. We're going to do really well. I would do what I think I would expect all of the tough talkers who have gone on our training and developed them skills. I just do what I would expect them to do in that moment. But then afterwards you go, "Oh man, that just makes everything real." I know all of our tough talkers who have done interventions have all said the same thing. You just zero in and you just do it. And then afterwards, that's why we do a lot of work on self-help for people who have done interventions. So self-care and self-help. So yeah, that was deep, wasn't it?
And it was, and
important.
And really important. And also one of the things you highlighted there that people are terrified of is asking the question, have you got a plan and when are you going to do it?
Yeah. So, that's why our training is so important, because often people just don't know what they can say. People still whisper suicide because they don't know they can use the word. It's not a swear word. It's not a banned word. Off gem, I haven't banned it yet. So, is it off gem? It is them, isn't it? Ofcom.
Of course.
Right? So they haven't banned those words yet. You've got to use it. You've got to use it outright, because if you don't use the right words, that's why the training is so important. If you're doing an interaction, especially with a man, and you give them a way out, they will often take it. So if you say to somebody, are you thinking about suicide? Are you considering suicide? If you it's yes or no. But if you said to them, you're not planning on doing something stupid, are you? you'll shut the conversation down, because what's in their head is not stupid. In their head, there's the solution to all of their problems. It fixes everybody's issues. Again, now you've just called it stupid, so that conversation is over. And if you're not shut the conversation down, they'll just go, no, it's not stupid.
Yeah.
So, so
this isn't relevant.
It's open to interpretation, and you're not in a space where you can have interpretation.
And also, when we talked about language is important as well. I know of instances where it's been missed, someone's thoughts of suicide, because they actually asked them, are you thinking of killing yourself? Because actually, most people who are having thoughts of suicide would probably understand what you're saying. But some people will then say, well, I'm not killing anyone. So it's words are important. And this is why the training is so important. I've done all the mental health first aid training. I've done all of those things. And I know that the training that we provide is real icing and cherry on the cake of those kind of situations, because you just don't get enough from the mental health first aid, as good as it is, from depending on who you are, depending on the instructor and everything else. You just need to know, what can I say? How can I say it? How do I spot the signs? Because it can be so subtle, especially with men.
Yeah.
And you've also got a brilliant partnership with the mental health app Metal. We had Neil Smith on our series a few months ago, and it's a great app that men can download to get that daily check-in. If they don't want to speak to a person as such.
It's amazing. I use it every day, and I'm not saying that just because we're on it, but we're proud partners to be on that app, because it's like a top up every day, a reminder every day of what you can be doing. You can listen to somebody for just 1 minute, and you go, do you know what? That's my top up, and it's just what I need. And there's so much good stuff on there. And if you go to the help page on Metal, you'll find our stuff, and you'll find other people's as well. And not long and soon, you'll start to see our stuff on their website, and you'll also start to see our stuff in the next few months on the app itself. So, that's how valuable we think this resource is. So, men, if you're listening, go and do the 7-day free trial, and you won't regret it.
And women, if you're listening, gift it to your man or your men around you, because you can now gift the app, which is a new thing. So you can send it to somebody, and we use it, don't we? And I use it too alongside. If it's on, we both use it, and it's even on my bad days, it's really helped me.
Yeah, I want to know, Steve, who can, you've talked about the training, who can have this training, and how do they get it?
So we again, I love exceptions that proves the rule, right? Or I think that's the right phrase. But so we train men who have been handpicked by their organization, as the men that other men listen to, those great role models in male-centric spaces. The exceptions that we make to that are when we are supporting those organizations who are supporting vulnerable men. So I mentioned them earlier, SJOG, our great charity up north, dealing with autistic men with thoughts of suicide. So we deliver training to all of their staff, mixed men and women, because it's right, because they need it, because they're dealing with those vulnerable adults and those vulnerable men. But then so we're doing a session we're delivering 5 training sessions for the UK AEA, so the Atomic Energy Authority, because they've had a couple of suicides over the last year, and they're drawing a line in the sand. They said, well, we're going to do everything we can to make sure that they can be supported. So what they've done is they've done 3 mixed courses, because there are lots of women in spaces where they are supporting those men. But then they are picked 2 courses that they would then handpick those leaders, those male role models that go into those spaces. And, I know it shouldn't, but men act differently as well when women are on the courses. It's like in a more like this protective role. Well, I mustn't say how I'm feeling because they may feel bad.
Yeah.
It's again, it's archaic, but it's still happening.
You've done some work with Thames Valley Police as well, haven't you?
Yes. You had
Stuart Codling.
Stuart Codling on, didn't you? Yeah.
Yeah.
Great guy. So yeah, so again, it's all about reframing mental health. So if you look, mental health is like his umbrella term, right? And everything gets shoehorned underneath it, which means that most men are instantly turned off by it. So then you have within mental health, you have all the different crises, all the different issues, and then there's one tiny sliver which says suicide, and then there's one tinier sliver that says male suicide. And in places like Thames Valley Police and other emergency services that we're doing a lot of work with at the moment, they have a lot of strong, stoic, silent men in those spaces. And so then when we looked at how they're framing it up, they want, why am I not getting enough engagement? So it could be something simple like they provide great services on their EAP. They provide a great role modeling. They have all these people who are all in the right place and they're not engaging. Well, they have to reframe the messaging. So if we say, well, what are your top 5 issues that men who are talking talk about? And they'll say, well, it's maybe it's separation from family, maybe it's loneliness. We get a lot of that with the construction industry. We get so we'll say, well, I'll give you a really great example. We worked with a construction company, and they were saying loneliness and separation from family was 2 of the biggest issues. They provide an EAP and they talk about mental health. Well, stop talking about mental health. Let's redesign your posters, reframe it as, we know working away from home can be a real problem. Okay. If you want some solutions on how we can help you with this, phone this number. Then there was another one, it's also finances as well, financial issues and separation from family. So we rebranded and reframed that. And they doubled their EAP engagement with men within a month. So because men were sat on the toilet looking up at this poster going, that's me. And they phoned that number. Now, everybody in the business from in HR went, well, it's the same number. Well, yeah, we know it's the same number, but not to that man.
Yeah.
To that man, it was a very different number. So again, yeah, with Thames Valley Police as well, we have that because, again, gosh, I'm going on. So I shock a lot of companies when I work with them because I will say quite outrageous things. So I talked to the police and I said, being a policeman is not bad for your mental health. And you just see them all going, what? Okay, notwithstanding PTSD or traumatic events, generally being a policeman is the best job in the world. You get to kick in doors and chase down bad guys. You chose to do it. You did all of this training and now you've got all these comrades, okay, and you've got one mission, reduce crime, and you bloody love it, and they're all nodding away now. However, when does it stop being that? What happens in your life when those things stop being that? Biological factors, identity factors, current life events, past history, identity. When do those things start impacting how well you do policing? That is when it becomes it can very often become a mental health problem. Again, notwithstanding traumatic events. So maybe we deal with those. If we can deal with those, you're a much better policeman. The cynic in me says that every business needs to get on board with this because it'll improve their bottom line. It'll improve their return on investment.
Yeah.
Presenteeism, absenteeism, brand loyalty, retention, recruitment. Better men, your bottom line will improve. Anyway, that's
better men, better relationships,
better society,
jobs, better society.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It really is.
So down in the show notes, there's links to all the Tough to Talk resources. If you're a business, partner with them. Even if you're a grassroots sports team with no cash for training, but you're a male-dominated space, there's a form on the site to apply to get Steve or one of the team to come to you and talk to your guys for free. But there's only one way that happens, and that's it also if people donate to the charity and support the work that they're doing. So partner with them, fundraise for them, donate to them, get them into your business. All the links are in the show notes.
Yeah, still no one has taken a wage from this charity. This charity is just funded by donations and paying for the training that we offer. So we're fully committed to this. We're all in. No one is doing this for a payday.
Excellent. And now it's my favorite bit of the podcast.
Well, I want to say first that thank you, both of you, because you are amazing men and you both make my life a whole lot better. I've got lots of amazing men in my life, and I think men get such a bad rap online, and I see it all the time. And I always say I have been surrounded by great men my whole life, and you two are definitely up there.
Oh, amazing. That's absolutely amazing. So you wouldn't rather spend some time with bears? Is that still a thing? No?
No, I love bears.
Yeah, there's an online phenomenon thing where women are going, I'd rather live with a bear than live with a man.
Oh, I had a huge argument with a woman online about that. Yeah. She wasn't very pleased with me when I told her that was a ridiculous question, and and
I don't understand it, but yeah,
gave my view on how wonderful men are in my life, and she just told me I was lucky, and that's not the case. I have had a lot of the experiences that women have had. It just happens that that's not all men, and I choose not to believe it's all men. So yes, I've had that question. I've had quite an argument with a woman online about my answer to that question. I did not choose the bear.
Yes, don't choose the bear. Most of us are great guys. It's fine.
So now I get to do my favorite bit, because let's face it, it's the closest I'm ever going to get to presenting Desert Island Discs on radio. Steve, can you give us a book, a piece of music, and a tool or framework that has really inspired or changed your journey that you want to give to our audience in case they want a bit of inspiration too?
Yeah, I guess. So when we looked at a book, I said I was obviously going to talk about my Man Up book. That's really important. I also want to say 12 Rules for Life by Jordan Peterson. If you can handle the way he words things, his audiobook's very good. But actually, it's Be More Pirate. I've got it here. Be More Pirate here, because we should. We should all be a little bit more pirate, because step out of the comfort zone. Just because someone says that's not how we do things, well, it is now. Because sometimes you just need to be a bit more pirate. So that's a really great route, and that's me all over. I know the trustees of the charity hate it when I'm being more pirate, but we're getting there.
Not all of them.
Not all of them, no. But then in terms of music, I guess. The story about where Break the Silence came from. It came to me at early hours of the morning. I woke up and I kept singing Enjoy the Silence by Depeche Mode. And it was words like violence, break the silence, words come rushing into my little world. And I just kept singing that one line all the time. And it just kept reminding me that we need to break the silence with men, that silent majority of men. How do we get to them? We break their silence. And so that song is my song.
And that was the night before you came to us for a brand session, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So
you've been awake all night.
Yeah, it was. I was buzzing, wasn't I? I was off my face on adrenaline, and because I was just like, I got something. But then I guess in terms of framework, and I know this sounds really cheesy, but actually it's that afternoon I spent with you, reimagining what we're trying to do with the charity, because I remember I just like threw up on you with all this stuff, right? This is it, and you just went for a walk. And then came back and he said, this is what I think we've heard. And literally our mission and our values and everything just started to appear. And in my head, I visually saw us moving away from the crowd, moving away from the noise, again, becoming very loud. And that process was amazing, and because all of a sudden we are now louder than them. And when people say to me now, I've seen a lot of your stuff out there now, and that's brilliant because our voice has been heard, which is great.
Well, we've never been anyone's framework before, so that's very good.
Yeah.
We like that. And it was funny because the word is getting out there, and you sent us a text yesterday morning saying Bex just said one of her friends has spotted a Tough to Talk hoodie in the gym, but it was ours.
Yeah. No, that's it. It was yours. But I'm waiting for certain things to happen. So recently, somebody said they'd heard of us. Somebody I didn't know, not associated with anybody I know. They were having a conversation with me. They had heard of Tough to Talk, and they were nothing to do with mental health or anything else I had just heard about. So that was really cool. And I'm just waiting for that time now that we get, somebody spots us and go, maybe seen one of our videos or done something like that and go, aren't you? And then I go, yeah. And they'll say somebody else and I go, no, not that guy. Oh, are you in the Proclaimers? No, I'm not.
Yeah, not that guy. But if anybody wants Tough to Talk hoodies, we love ours. It's so cozy. It's the thing we wear in the gym all the time. I wore it in the gym in Brighton and loads of people came and asked me about it. So if you want to spread the word in the basic way possible to help this charity, buy a hoodie and wear it out and about and people will start asking you.
It's interesting. I've had people stop me in the street and say, "Oh, can I just ask you what that is?" And then they go on to tell me a personal story, and it's amazing.
I think it's great. I think our merch is really good. It's great quality, and I think it's really good stuff. So if you buy it, you're directly supporting the charity. And I told this story the other day on social media. We had a guy who said, "I love what you do. I want to help," and I was like, "Okay, no problem at all." And I said, well, what can you do? And we had a conversation. It turns out that actually none of his skill sets matched what we needed. It also turned out that he had zero time to help us at all. And I don't know why. It was the first time I'd ever said it. I went, can you spare a £5 a month? And he went, yeah. And I was like, well, please go to our website and just set up the direct debit service on our website for £5 a month until you want to stop. And then I thought, I'm going to see that guy again. That'll never happen. And then an hour later, it came up, bosh, £5 a month. And you go, wow, and that will make such a difference to the stuff that we're doing. Because we have like a Robin Hood method. I know you were wrapping up, but basically those organizations that can pay for our services, and then charities, CICs, people who deal with those vulnerable men who don't have any funding, we pay for theirs. So it's like a total reciprocal way of doing things. So, yeah.
Amazing. Steve, it's been really great to get you on the show and hear all about it, and to really just to share it with our audience, because it's such an important mission, such an important message for the whole of society, not just men. So thank you very much.
No worries. It's an absolute pleasure. Thank you for sharing my story. It's amazing.
Thanks, Steve. We love you.
Okay, you too. All right.
Oh, Jenny, your life's just one big drama. This was what my auntie said to me, and it inspired me to put all my dramas in one book. So if your life is full of drama, and I believe everyone's life is full of drama, this is the book with real stories, real struggles, real tools to navigate real life.